Khalila Reynolds, and welcome to Taking Stock. We're bringing you all the latest business and finance news and telling you how it will affect you and your money. So come on, let's get this money. First up, the Jamaican dollar hit another record low against the U.S. last week at $142.58 on Thursday. Are the Bank of Jamaica strategies working? I sit down with BOJ Governor Richard Byles. And later, the analysts join Marc Gayle on the latest stock market developments. We get more insights on the Transjamaican Highway IPO, Proven's upcoming APO, and more. But first, here's What's Hot, brought to you by Jamaica Money Market Brokers, your best interest at heart. The Andrew Holness administration is planning to spend almost $853 billion in the upcoming fiscal year. That's $7 billion less than the current year's budget when the supplementary estimates are factored in. $778 billion are allocated for housekeeping expenses such as wages, while capital spending on projects rises from $72 to $74 billion. The Ministry of Education is set to receive the largest increase, moving from $112 to $117 billion, while national security gets a $2 billion raise, up from $76 to $78 billion. Finance Minister Dr. NIGEL CLARKE is to open the budget debate on March 10. Sagicor Investments is to underwrite Proven Investments' upcoming additional public offer APO. The $50 million APO is Proven's first unrestricted offer of shares to the public. It's also the largest offer the company has undertaken since inception. It's expected to open by the end of the month. And speaking of Sagicor Investments, they've partnered with Cygnus Capital to launch a $100 million regional private equity fund called Cygnus Deneb. This is Cygnus's third alternative investment company. The company says they're expanding their reach in the non-traditional financing space with dedicated funds for private equity, private credit, and real estate. Cygnus says Deneb will target growth sectors across the region, such as energy, manufacturing, financial services, distribution, and hospitality. The company says they're already far advanced with the initial target raise of $30 million, and they say they've closed their first investment, a significant shareholding in Aruba Wine and Dine. The Gleaner newspaper is reporting a massive data breach at Victoria Mutual Wealth Management. According to the Gleaner, VM Wealth CEO Res Burchinson has admitted that a team member inadvertently sent thousands of customer records to a number of clients in an email. The breach happened on Thursday, February 13. Burchinson says none of their clients' financial information was shared and that they will implement additional controls. The Greater Bernard Lodge Development Master Plan is moving ahead despite criticism. At a press conference last week, Cabinet Minister Darrell Vaz says they've revised the plan after concerns from interest groups to ensure that more of the land is used for agriculture and less for residences. He also assured farmers and informal settlers that they won't be forcibly removed. He says the project will transform Portmore into a smart city. What's Hot was brought to you by Jamaica Money Market Brokers, your best interest at heart. And when we come back, concerns about the value of the Jamaican dollar are in the news again. I sit down with the Bank of Jamaica Governor Richard Byles in his office at the Central Bank. Taking Stock is filmed on location at I Create Studio on Hope Road.
There's a surplus of unfilled jobs in the creative industry. Kickstart a creative career with I Create Institute.
Now I'm at I Create, I just love it.
I saw where I was learning things that I could utilize in my present job.
And I have all the skills to do every basic animation thing now.
Jumpstart a creative career with I Create Institute at UCC. Visit icreateedu.com.
This segment of Taking Stock is brought to you by Bulwark Insurance Agent. Insurance made easy. Welcome back to Taking Stock. Well, let me tell you, this has been the most difficult interview to get. It's taken me a few months, but we finally have him, the Governor of the Bank of Jamaica, Richard Byles. Welcome to Taking Stock.
Thank you, Khalila.
So you've been on the job almost 6 months now.
Almost.
You've had a little time to settle in. What's it been like so far?
Great. The staff here have been very welcoming to me. I can't forget to say that every time I'm asked that question. And I enjoy being here. You know, I like economics. I find it very intellectually stimulating at the bank.
They pulled you out of retirement for this job.
Absolutely. I retired from retirement.
So what's been the biggest challenge so far?
I think that focusing at home first on getting the staff to be engaged and to be excited about being here and doing a great job has been one of my top priorities, and we have been in a program to get that done. But also the relationship with the DTIs, the commercial banks, to listen to them more, to hear their experiences, to take on board their ideas, and to propose and stimulate them to be more innovative. That's been another exciting frontier for me. So I would say those are the two main things that I've been kind of focused on in the last 6 months.
But you're coming from a DTI,
yes.
a long-time banker with Sagicor. Do you find the deposit-taking institutions slower to react than you would have expected, given that you have that perspective?
You know, it's a very interesting perspective because it means that I come with an outlook that all of the DTIs have on the central bank. And so the very things that I was critical of are the things that I know have a chance to adjust and to make better. And that's been one of my aims, you know, to fix those things. So things like service standards is an objective that is topmost in my mind for 2020. We're working on them now to try and get them to be reasonable and acceptable, and I'm going to be handing them to the DTIs and saying, this is what you can hold us to. So the perspective of
service standards for the BOJ.
For the BOJ.
I thought you meant for the commercial banks.
No, for BOJ in servicing the DTIs, the commercial banks, yes, because we can't expect them to have high standards for the public, and we don't have high standards for them also.
True.
So we want to deliver on those standards, and we're writing them now, and we're going to be publishing them to the DTIs very shortly. Coming from a business point of view, I think has a different advantage and perspective in central banking. For example, the whole staff engagement, that's something that it was natural for me at Sagicor. And so when I'm here, it's a normal thing for me to be focused on. And I think that the staff appreciate it and want to get involved more.
Do you feel a lot of pressure coming from both the banks and the public?
Well, the public is always concerned primarily about the exchange rate.
Right.
The banks, less pressure. I think the banks have a couple issues that they want the central bank to look at, which I am doing.
Like what?
Well, for example, they propose that we do swaps, and we have taken that on board, got that approved, and swaps are actually happening in the market now. So that is where a commercial bank, either to another commercial bank or to the central bank, can say, sell me foreign currency today, and I will give you back in 30 days, 60 days time. That's a swap, right? And we settle on the two prices. And that's in the market today. A nice innovation that came from the commercial banks, which we took on board and ran with it and executed on it within a matter of weeks.
And that's something that just started in January?
It just started practically in January, yes. And it's being done now.
How is it different from the forward market that's been discussed?
It's almost the same as a forward. Yeah, it is.
So what's a forward market?
A forward is the same that you say you want to buy dollars in 30 days time. You go to your commercial bank and you say, what price will you sell me currency in 30 days time? You agree that price, and in 30 days time they deliver it to you. So you don't have to be pressuring a rate today to get it, when in fact you don't need it until 30 days time. So in December, for example, when the rate was down at 132, if you went to your commercial bank and asked for a forward, then you could perhaps benefit from a rate. Today, that is much.
From what I understand, the banks haven't really taken that on. I can't go to a bank and ask for a forward rate. They're not going to do it.
No, the banks on our record show it because they report it to us. They have done, I believe it is about 80 forwards last year. Remember, it's a pretty new concept, so 80, not bad. We'd like it to be more prolific, and it can be, and we're doing whatever else we have to do to allow the banks to use that product more.
Mm-hmm. From what I understand about the swap arrangement,
yes,
it really is an innovative idea because it allows you to essentially intervene in the market, but it doesn't have an impact on the reserves because you get back the money at a set point in time.
Correct.
Is that how it works?
Correct, absolutely. And the swap doesn't have to happen just between BOJ and the commercial bank. Between commercial banks, they can do the swaps too. So a bank may find that it has foreign currency and another one wants it. They can do the swap between themselves. In fact, that's what we would like to see, because generally speaking, the supply is higher this year than it was last year. So the foreign currency is out there. It's just that some institutions have more and some have less. And if we can get the swaps and forwards to work, it would even out some of the peaks and trough in the rate.
I spoke to the president of the Manufacturers Association just this morning, Richard Pandohi.
Yeah.
They were complaining a few weeks ago that US dollars were unavailable. It wasn't even an issue of the rate at that time, they just couldn't get it. And in preparation for this interview, I called him back, I said, how's the situation now? He says it's much improved. So that's good to hear.
And I stay in touch with the JMA, JEA, all of the private sector institutions and persons. I stay in close contact with them to hear what they are telling me. Their market intelligence is important for me. And I also communicate to them what are some of the problems in the market. There are lots of portfolio investments going on, meaning people want large sums of US dollars to probably to buy something, whether it's in Jamaica or it's abroad. And it's kind of hard for the market to digest a $50 million US dollar transaction or $80 million. So that's where swaps and forwards, I hope, will take out some of that kind of special demand.
Are all these acquisitions and mergers on the market having an impact on our dollar?
To the extent that people are demanding dollars to do those investments, yes. Last year, for example, we had an abnormal portfolio demand of about 550 million US. Now, that's a large sum to digest in our foreign exchange market, but we did it. The central bank had to intervene, I believe, 2 or 3 times, but eventually we were able to buy back those funds and to keep our reserves at a reasonable level.
I understand the TransJamaica highway transaction, those bond notes were completed late December, I think the 23rd. That's a lot of money as well. Did that have any impact on it?
Yes, it did, but we were in contact with the bank that did it constantly. I mean, for maybe 5-6 weeks, we were in daily contact to make sure that it was as orderly as possible when they went to the market.
But could that have been a reason we saw the dollar end up where it was in January? And even now in February, as of this morning, we're doing this interview on a Wednesday, it's 141.54.
One of the challenges we've had in January is that in December, many of the banks ended the year short, meaning they had sold more US dollars than they actually had. And in January, they started to buy to fill back that gap. And that has been a pressure that we have been feeling. In addition, there is a particular banking institution that is buying for a transaction, which is as yet unknown. And that amount is significant.
To the public, you know?
No, I don't know what transaction they're buying it for, but they have advised me that they are doing it. And that's a good thing about the communication, you know, that they now feel at ease to come and tell us what is going to happen, and so that we can prepare for it. And I've been in touch with them, and they've been buying in as orderly a manner as they can. But nonetheless, it's put a little pressure on the rate.
What happened to the sales in December? BOJ put out a statement saying that you ended up issuing less currency than was expected. And a lot of people took that as an indication that Christmas shopping was down. Is that the correct thing to extrapolate from that data?
Yes, the amount of cash in circulation was down somewhat. And I believe also electronic payments were down a smidgen. So Christmas was a little weaker this year in terms of transactions than it was last year.
And we noticed that inflation for December also came in just a little bit above target, over the 6%.
Yes, I mean, we were taken by surprise by agricultural prices. Not even all of them, just some of them. And it drove the inflation rate to 6.2%. Now, when you strip away the agricultural prices and energy prices over which we have no control, inflation is less than 3%, 2.9%. That's what we call core inflation. So inflation is generally under good control, but the drought and the floods that followed really played havoc in December. So I expect that January, February, fingers crossed, we don't have any bad climatic effects, weather effects, I should say. We should see that inflation rate come down back.
I feel like there's just always something that causes us not to hit target.
Kalila, that is so true, because we're such a small, open, fragile economy. Right? And so management of it is important, but also making the economy more robust is what we really need to do. Otherwise, we'll find that, so we need more buffer in the economy in order to sail through these periods of unevenness.
Do you ever get frustrated when you hear people keep harping on the dollar, and the BOJ's message has been, focus on inflation, guys, focus on inflation, but people are still obsessed with the dollar?
Yes, and it's going to, remember, that's an obsession we have had for 15, 20 years. And it will take time to change. But inflation is really what ultimately impacts us in our pocket. And so I think the program, the campaign that we have, which has just started a year ago or so, is making people a little bit more understanding that inflation is an issue they should pay attention to. Our next step is to, with your assistance, I hope, make them understand how we impact inflation and how inflation affects them. So to be a little more appreciative of how inflation is created in the economy and how we at BOJ manage it. That's the next phase.
What's your message to Jamaicans right now? Overall?
The economy is in a much better place than it was many years ago. Every year, the economy has become a little bit more robust. And we should take hope in that, and we should look forward to making it a deeper and more robust economy. For that, I think, Kalila, we need to do a little bit more planning, because I think that for a small, open, fragile economy, it doesn't come naturally. We have to kind of focus on what we want to do, get our resources aimed at it, and in that way have some achievement.
I thought that was my last question, but I had one that I really wanted to ask, and I'm glad I just remembered it. Why have the banks just been so slow to respond to the BOJ's continued lowering of interest rates? You're down to 0.5%, but they're still at 6%, 7% on car loans and mortgages, and much higher than that for business loans. Why?
Yes, but it has come down. I mean, I understand it's not as low as we'd like it to be, but relatively speaking, it's low compared to a year ago, 2 years ago.
I bought a car last year, December, and I was trying to negotiate a better interest rate. I got it at about 7.5. And I was telling the rep that by this time next year, I bought the car December 2018. I said by December 2019, it should be less than 6%. Look back at the same bank, interest rate is still the same rate that they sold me the car at a year before. So it seems like they're not moving.
Well, I mean, you could always threaten to move your account if you could get a better rate. But it's a question you should ask the banks. They have costs, of course. So on top of the 0.5 or whatever they are paying their customers, they have costs and they have a profit margin. But rates have come down significantly. And the extension of credit to the private sector continues to grow in double digits, 15% or so year over year. So we're happy with that.
Well, I still want to see them do better.
Absolutely.
A lot better and a lot faster.
And so do I. So I'll press them for you.
All right, good. All the best, Mr. Byles. Thank you for joining me.
It was my pleasure. Thank you, Kalila.
All right. And when we come back, I've got your market recap, and the analysts are standing by with Marc Gayle. This segment of Taking Stock was brought to you by Bulwark Insurance Agency. Insurance made easy. Time now for your market recap. 93 stocks traded across both the main and junior markets of the JSE for the week ending Friday, February 14, 2020. 31 advanced, 51 declined, and 11 traded firm. Nearly 180 million shares changed hands on the Jamaican dollar market, totaling nearly $536 million. Wigton Wind Farm again traded the most, taking up 39% of market volume. The stock lost 8 cents, with people buying and selling nearly 70 million shares in the company. Wigton opens this week at 76 cents. Select F traded the second highest, with people buying and selling nearly 55 million shares in the company, taking up 31% of market volume. The stock remained unchanged to start this week at $1.05. And Select M also traded heavily, with people buying and selling 15 million shares in the company. The stock lost 1 cent, opening this week at 92 cents. Turning to the top advancers now, Pulse Investment saw the biggest gain. Its share price jumped 32% to start this week at $10.61. Salada Foods Jamaica gained an impressive 17% to open the week at $35, and Epley Caribbean Property Fund rose 13% to open at $42. On the losing side now, CAC 2000 9.5% cumulative redeemable preference shares was the biggest loser, down 21% to open this week at 93 cents. Medical disposables and supplies was the second biggest loser, down 20% to open the week at $5.03, and Paramount Trading lost 14% last week. Paramount opened Monday at $1.47. This segment of Taking Stock, The Analysts, is brought to you by Proven Wealth, Jamaica Money Market Brokers, and Ideal Portfolio Services.
Welcome back to Taking Stock. For those that missed the announcement last episode, my name is Marc Gayle. I'll be sitting in for Kalila while she's on maternity leave. And Kalila, please take the maternity leave, put down your computer, put down your phone, relax. We got this. The entire crew, they're very experienced, so just relax and enjoy yourself, right? And also congrats to the entire Reynolds family for the successful delivery of their bouncing baby boy, Ryan Reynolds. So, congratulations. Now, joining us today, we have, for the analyst section, we have Devroy Davis. He's a co-founder of Caribbean Value Investor and host of Beyond the Stock Price on YouTube. And then we also have Jamelia Jalal Walikram, Junior Research Analyst at NCB Cap Markets. And we have Julian Morrison, Investment Analyst at Proven Wealth. And welcome, guys.
Thank you, man.
Thanks to Wisinko for our water, our wonderful water. All right, guys, so I guess the first thing that we want to do, TJH, Transjamaica, has been in the headlines for the last couple of weeks, and we've discussed it ad nauseum. Last week, Kalila did a wonderful episode. It was an hour-long episode, talking about with Dr. Clarke and with some analysts, and we're talking about it. So one of the things that I really wanted us to do this week is to kind of think about or discuss at least one thing that hasn't been discussed actively, right? So, if you guys can kind of share from your perspective, you've been following, what has been happening, can you just, give the audience, something that kind of jumped out at you that you haven't heard people, talking about a lot? So we can start with that point.
For me, TransJamaica, I think, has been fairly well covered, both within the media and by the brokerage houses and selling agents. The one thing that kind of jumped out at me, and this was sort of a concern for me as it relates to TransJamaica going forward, was the operations and maintenance agreement that they had with JIO. The term for that agreement was around 5 years. So one of the things I would have wanted, and I got the opportunity to kind of speak on it a little bit at the investor briefing, was where was the true competence in terms of the operations and the management of the highway in and of itself, being that TransJamaica is primarily serving as an the infrastructure asset management company for the highway, which is really owned by NROC.
Right.
So my concern was really around the operations agreement and where the competence truly rested.
And just to be clear, so JIO, which is the operator, right?
Yes.
It's a joint venture between Bowie and Vincent, right?
Right.
So I guess your concern is just that they are, like they have technical expertise.
Yes.
So what happens if they walked away from
that agreement?
How will that impact TJH?
That's precisely correct.
Right.
And one of the presenters at the investor briefing actually, he gave some assurance in saying that approximately 90% of the employees of GIO are actually Jamaicans.
Right.
And so the competence really is with those persons. So they have the option to either employ another management company or to even form a new one with those persons. So that was a primary concern that I had.
Essentially we've seen like a knowledge transfer, or
Exactly.
we're seeing a knowledge transfer between GIO to Jamaicans.
Precisely.
Okay,
Precisely
that's interesting. That's very interesting. All right, thank you. Jamelia?
Well, for me, I don't think the impact of our macroeconomic stability has really been tied to TJH performance or how it helps to improve population growth around the corridors of the toll road.
Okay.
So the fact that we have low unemployment at the moment, 7.2%. Unemployment being low means that more persons have jobs, more income that they're willing to spend on housing and cars.
Right.
In addition to that, we have a accommodative monetary policy technique or regime going on right now.
And okay, so for the viewers,
Okay, accommodative means that the Bank of Jamaica, who is responsible for monetary policy, they are adjusting their interest rates to facilitate greater level of spending.
Right.
So they have been, in previous, lowering interest rate to facilitate greater economic activity, so boost spending and so boost inflation.
Right, so BOJ has kept their key policy rate low, which basically makes money cheap, which allows people to borrow easier and more cheaply, and therefore expand business and so on. Yeah.
So they set a rate that is then passed down to banks because banks borrow.
Or should be passed down to banks.
Should be passed down to banks. And so when that rate transfers to the banks, then they can charge a lower mortgage, for instance.
Right.
And so we have a low interest rate environment at the moment.
Right.
Low interest rate environment means that it's cheaper for persons to borrow, so they purchase more houses.
Right.
In addition to that, Government of Jamaica, in their tax package last year, or their fiscal stimulus, they would have lowered stamp duty and asset taxes, which also makes the whole transaction costs around purchasing housing cheaper.
Okay.
So all of those factors allow persons to purchase housing.
Okay.
Now, if you look at where the most affordable houses are now, they're actually within St. Catharines, so Portmore, Spanish Town, Old Harbour.
Right.
And so you see where those factors will push persons towards purchasing homes in those areas which surround the toll road. And so there should be an increase in population around the toll road, so that would boost traveling.
So basically what you're saying is that because in your prospectus they talk about general increased motorization, right? So like over the last couple of years, on average, the amount of cars that, additional new cars that have hit the road, it grows by about 3% a year. So the argument that you're making is that as a result of a more stable macroeconomic environment, more people will buy more houses, particularly in those environs, which will ultimately lead to more traffic on the toll road.
Yes.
Okay, good, very good point. Interesting. Julian?
Yes, and to support Jamila's point about St. Catherine, we have to look at the demographics if we really want to have a fulsome appreciation of the asset. So to go further on this point, most of our expansion in terms of human development in Jamaica, it would have to happen westward, west to Kingston, because we're finding that the Kingston 6 and the Kingston 8 areas are in high demand, but they can't really manage the capacity relative to other areas in St. Catherine.
Right.
So in other words, there's more upside from an expansion standpoint in terms of household formation in that area.
Interesting.
So we could see that in the next 5 to 10 years, so to speak. So branching off from that, the asset is very unique.
Meaning TJH.
Right,
Right.
TJH.
Right.
It's very unique in that there aren't any toll roads currently listed on the market.
Right.
So it gives a diversification opportunity to investors.
Right.
The other side of it is that because the asset is so large in terms of market capitalization, it has the ability to change the capitalization of our market.
Right.
If we were to look at how our index is composed, there are about 10 or 15 companies that significantly drive the index.
Right.
In terms of size. There's your Carib Cement, NCB,
Right.
Sagicor, Scotia, and so on. With such a large asset, we see the capitalization of the market changing. So it means that those assets won't have as much influence on the overall index. So that will cause portfolio managers to think differently about how they can beat the index, so to speak.
Okay, interesting. Thank you. All right. So aside from TJH, what else caught you guys' eye for the week? I mean, it's been a very, busy week or active week in the markets. What else caught your eye, Devroy?
For me, well, it's earnings season now, so a lot of the companies have started to report earnings. We've seen Wisynco, we've seen Elite Diagnostics, among others. The other thing aside from that would have caught my eye is actually where I'm starting to see price appreciation happening in different companies.
Right.
I observed last week that there was a shift towards more of the companies with exposure to real estate. Capri being the company that had returned above 20% in terms of capital appreciation. So
within the last week or 2 weeks?
Within the last week.
Right.
So
okay.
that's one of the interesting things that I'm watching now. I'm looking to see what the response will be to these earnings, and then going forward, how portfolios or how people are going to actually structure their portfolios going forward.
Okay, Jamilia?
For me, one of the biggest things was the joint venture between Sagicor and Cygnus.
Right,
yes.
right. Cygnus, the NEB.
Yes,
Right.
yes. So they're creating a private equity fund, and through that fund, they're going to be investing in private companies throughout the Caribbean.
Right.
They've stated that they already have acquired 20% ownership, I believe, in.
I think it's 40%.
Oh.
40%, yeah.
Okay.
The Aruban company.
Yes,
Yeah.
Aruba Wine and
Wine
Dine.
and Dine.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So through this, they're going to be able to diversify their income streams.
Right.
Cygnus is usually known for financial solutions, so they lend.
Right.
And this is a way for them to step out of just getting interest income, but now through investment in these areas, they're able to boost their bottom line, basically.
Right.
And I expect to see more joint ventures like this in the
Right.
market, because since it's very competitive,
Right.
there's really little room to grow through fees, etc. So they're going to
Right.
have to find ways to find synergies
creative
and
and
find
innovative solutions.
new growth areas throughout the Caribbean.
It's co-managed between Cygnus and
And
Sagicor
Sagicor,
Investments.
yes.
Right? Okay, thank you. Julian?
So to, again, support Jamilia's point, the development really speaks a lot about where our market is, because it's very important for us to identify co-investments, because co-investments in certain asset classes or investment vehicles or genres, it actually helps to manage risk.
Right.
So you'll have two teams managing the risk because there are two sets of expertise that are finding synergy. So that's more brain power to actually look at the deals and find out, all right, how can we generate risk-adjusted return?
Right.
And also, from a capital availability standpoint, it prevents either party from committing too much capital at once. So there's definitely a lot of value to garner from that. It's interesting that Sagicor, in terms of deals, I've seen them more active in a deal space in terms of investing their own capital.
Well, and I mean, you, Mr. Proven, I don't want to put you on the spot, but you know, speaking of Sagicor, putting their money where their mouth is and doing more deals and being more creative. You know, you guys just announced that they are underwriting your APO.
So that's another example.
Any breaking news you want to drop on us now, Julian?
Well, we have to observe protocol.
Okay.
I can only say what is available to the public. The thing is, we are looking at, first of all, for those who may not be familiar, Proven is a strategic investor. So what Proven does is to look at opportunities and to assess these opportunities and determine whether or not they are going to invest and then realize those investments later on. So the capital raise would be within that vein, but I can't go any further.
All right, fair enough. Well, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Let's take our final break.
Taking Stock, the Analysts was brought to you by Proven Wealth, Jamaica Money Market Brokers, and Ideal Portfolio Services. That's our show for this week. Thanks for watching, and thanks to Marc Gayle for filling in with the Analysts. Make sure you subscribe to this YouTube channel, youtube.com/Kalila Ray. Follow me on Instagram at Kalila Ray, and check out my other features, Money Mondays JA, Money Moves JA, and What's in It for Me. I'm Kalila Reynolds. See you next time.